Yeah, it's live now.
Okay, I'll just put this link as well. Yeah, I'll keep talking. So, yeah, we have worked with a couple of Drupal 8 core initiatives, not all of them, mostly around routing, DHMI, and probably views and core. These are three initiatives which we have worked closely with. So, then once Drupal 8 beta launched, we thought, why not pick up some modules and start porting them to Drupal 8? So that's what we started with. Initially, we picked up really small modules which we used to maintain, and so yeah, initially we picked up those modules. Then, just a second, I'm getting confused. Let me just put the link over there first.
Hey, can you cut off the video so that it doesn't need the bandwidth?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Piyush,
Yeah,
the audience here is mostly developers who have worked on Drupal 7 modules, but they are totally new to Drupal 8.
great. Uh,
So,
yeah, I have the presentation prepared
yeah,
accordingly.
you can get started with the walkthrough.
Sure. Sure, sure, sure. So yeah, then we started with porting Drupal 7 modules to Drupal 8. And yeah, I'll show you, I'll probably walk you through one of our code sprints. Event to everyone, yes. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Let's, yeah. No, 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 that's fine. Slowing. Yeah. So yeah, this is one of the presentations which we did at DrupalCamp Mumbai, DrupalCamp Delhi, and while so this is before the Drupal 8 beta was launched. But yeah, I've modified I've updated the slides to have the latest information. Okay. Yeah, let's take a look at what we'll be discussing today. Uh, so basically, this talk will be primarily focused on how do you port a Drupal 7 module into Drupal 8. Okay. File, then we'll come down to the to how you define routes now. So routes are basically menus. The menus was the technical term in Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, it's routes. So forms, how they have changed. Then we'll come down to the configuration system, which was your variable system basically. Variable get, variable set, variable delete, and those things. Then there is a changes that the very commonly used functions in Drupal 7, which have been replaced or removed or changes related to them. Before we talk about any of these, we need to understand what is Drupal 8 and why there was a need for. Okay, so in Drupal 7, whatever code you write, it's mostly procedural, right? Executes like a procedural code. In Drupal 8, everything is object oriented now. So you'll have classes for everything. You can extend those classes. So all the core functionality in Drupal 8 is provided in the form of base classes, abstract classes, or interfaces to you. What your module needs to do is extend these or implement these interfaces to do whatever you need to do. So with this point, it brings a major architectural change. So the way you used to architect your Drupal 7 module, it wouldn't be the same with Drupal 8. You can architect it in a lot better way. So for example, let's talk about a module which has a lot of helper functions. Now these helper functions are social stats. What it does is this module allows you to fetch the share count for a specific URL on your website. For example, there's a URL. It could be shared on Facebook. It could be shared on Twitter. It could be shared on Google Plus, right? So what this module does is it on cron it fetches the count, the share count for a specific URL. So in Drupal 7, if you had to write, you would write a lot of helper functions, then reuse those functions that way, right? In Drupal 8, you would do it in a little different way. What you will do is you'll define an interface. This interface would have like the commonly used functions for fetching and storing this data into the database, and then you'll implement this interface to create your specific Facebook classes, then Google Plus classes, then your LinkedIn, whatever. Right, so you see the way you architect your modules needs to be rethought. Okay, now coming down to one of the very important terms, that's dependency injection. So anybody has a clue on what dependency injection is? Anyone?
No idea.
Okay. So dependency injection, maybe it sounds like a huge term, a big term, but it's 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 a really simple concept. As the name suggests, it's dependency injection. It means that injecting dependencies. Now, where do you inject this dependency? This dependency. So, for example, if you write a object-oriented program, you'll have constraints. So, for example, you have a code base. Now, this code needs to interact with your database, right? For example, it needs to fetch some data and display it on the UI. So, database becomes a dependency for this piece of code, right? So what dependency injection says is, rather than initializing your database object inside this specific piece of code, just supply the code, just inject the code with a database object, with a, okay, clear?
Yeah.
We'll get into details soon. Then the next term is what is routing. So in Drupal 7, there was hook menu through which you created menu items, right? Menu items were paths basically. In Drupal 8, the term path and menu has completely been replaced with routes. So wherever in the code there was a to be replaced with a route name. So you'll have a route name which will be mapped to a specific path pattern. Okay. In Drupal, if while you're porting a module from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, you need to replace this path name with the route name. The path pattern with a route name, basically. Controllers. So in Drupal 7, when you write a hook menu, you used to define a page callback for that pattern, right? Now, what this page callback used to do for you. Whenever the tab pattern is there in the URL, it used to call this function and render whatever data this page callback is returning. This whole thing has been converted into controllers. Now Drupal, as I told you earlier, that Drupal 8 core, it provides you a lot of base classes, right? So Drupal 8 provides a base class called controller base, which you need to extend to create a custom controller for you. The next term is config factory. So in Drupal 7, I'm pretty sure all of us would have used variable get, variable set, these functions, and it all get used to get stored inside your variables table, right? So in Drupal 8, it has been completely scraped off and replaced with a config factory. Now what this config factory does for you is it stores your configurations and lets you access those configurations using objects that are instance of config factory class. So this has completely changed. We'll take a look at it deeper in the code. Let's talk a little more about dependency because this is the core of Drupal 8 right now. At a lot of places you'll see dependency injection being used. So dependency injection, it's a design pattern, means the preferred way which you use to write your code, which you use to structure your code. So yeah, it's a $25 term for a 5 cents concept. So yeah, before trying to understand it, let's take a look at why is this important. Okay, so can you all see my screen right now?
Yeah, we can.
Is it? You can read the code, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here is a function. What it does is it does a module load include on a different module on which it's dependent, right? So
Everybody
this
knows
code,
what the module load include function does, right? Yeah, fine.
okay, what module load include would do for you is it will load a include file from a different module. Okay, so this module is probably my module. This module's name is my module, and it's trying to load an include file from another module, module underscore X, right? So this code looks really cluttered to me because the a function in my module needs to know about module X, right? Needs to know that there is an include file in module X which you need to include. This is really a bad way of writing it. Because the next functions it won't work without the module load include at all. Let's take a look at some object oriented code. So here is a class. Okay, now in its constructor what we are doing is we are instantiating a mailer object, right? So previously I told you that dependency injection means that rather than initializing the object inside the constructor, you pass it, you inject it, right? So over here what we're doing is $this ka mailer is equals to new mailer. So we're instantiating a mailer class over here. The problem with this approach is in case your mailer class changes, the implementation in mailer class changes. For example, suppose your mailer class now takes a argument, now takes a mailer class constructor takes an argument now. Then you'll have to update this class as well, right? It makes your code heavily dependent on your mailer class. Correct?
Yeah.
A very simple example. For example, let's consider your mailer class. Previously, it used to just send out text emails, but now it needs to send out my emails. So in that case, probably it needs a constructor. It needs another argument in its constructor. You go ahead and update your mailer class now. Now this notifier class would stop working. It would throw errors, right? Until unless you go ahead and make this. And pass this mailer instantiation the object that it needs, right? It'll start throwing errors. So this is again a very coupled code. So the main objective of writing dependency injection is you'll write a clutter-free code, you'll write a code that's reusable anywhere, you'll write a code that's completely decoupled. Let's take a look at how do we do that now. You see the part in red and orange probably.
Yeah.
So what we're doing here is we're injecting an instance of mailer class inside this constructor, right? Does this sound good?
Yeah.
Looks good, right? But say your notifier class, it's accepting a mailer, accepting an instance of mailer class. Now, say you have 10 different mailer classes. Now, one of them sends just text messages. Another one sends your there's a third class that needs to send out your probably MIME emails. The fourth one probably needs to just send out images. The various different implementations, right? But all of these 4 or 5 mailer classes in core, what they're doing is they're sending out a message, right? So what we could do is we could write an interface, and all these 4 to 5 classes, they implement this interface. Which you get by using interface is you could inject an interface in the constructor rather than injecting the class. Now on the runtime, whenever this notifier class is being initialized or being used, you could pass it an instance of the mailer text class, or you could pass it an instance of mailer email class, or mailer MIME email class, or mailer image class. You getting the?
Yeah.
Does this all make sense, or is it getting confusing for you guys?
So Piyush,
Confusing.
Yes.
What part is confusing?
I have a question here.
Yeah.
In the prototype of the constructor, you like function public function constructor, and you pass an instance of interface, but the as I know, interface doesn't cannot be instantiated.
Yeah, interface doesn't need to be initiated. So, but if this constructor is accepting an interface while instantiating a notifier class,
Okay.
or wherever your code is doing that for you,
Mm-hmm.
you could pass in an instance of mailer X class, mailer Y class, mailer Z class. All of these 3 are implementing the same mailer interface.
Oh, I got it now.
Got it?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Now
whatever.
there's another question. Yeah.
Sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead.
So whatever class implements this mailer interface, so whatever mailer class which implements this interface can be passed in when initializing an notifier object.
Correct. Any
Okay.
class that's implementing this interface basically.
Okay.
Okay. Now the next roaming in your minds is, okay, we'll come back to that. It'll get more confusing. So yeah, if you want to learn more about DI, there's a interesting video by Kat Bailey on which was presented in DrupalCon Portland. It's focused primarily on how you do dependency injection in Drupal 8. See, I'll forward this slide to you as well, so you guys can go through it. Okay. The next term is service container. So what you did is, in this code, you are injecting the constructors an object of what it needs, right? So for example, this class needs a mailer interface $m. So you're not instantiating a mailer interface, or probably let's go to the previous example, mailer $m, a mailer class object. You're not instantiating $m anywhere, right? Right?
Yeah, I am on
You
mute,
must
so
have in your mind that how does this class get, where does this object get created, right? To answer that question, you have a concept called, you have a term called dependency injection container. There are different names for it: service container, dependency injection container. It could be called anything out of that. So what service container or a dependency injection container is? So dependency injection container is basically a piece of code which would hold information about what your class depends on, and logic to create an object for those classes, an object of those classes. Okay, so what dependency injection container would do for you is, whenever you're trying to initialize a class, look for dependencies, look for its dependencies in the dependency injection container, initialize, check if those objects are already instantiated or loaded in the memory. If they are, then it'll just reuse them. Otherwise, it'll go ahead, create them, load them into the memory, and then make your class use those objects. Did you guys get it? Or should I just repeat? Any confusions, guys?
yeah, can you repeat it again?
Yeah, so what dependency injection container is? Basically, it's a, I'll call it as a block of code. What it does is it will store your class name. So I'll just write it for you how it does store. Maybe that makes it more clear. For example, I had my notifier class, right?
Okay.
It will store an array of dependencies for this class. Dependency 2. Similarly, for any other, there could be a number of classes which are using dependency injection, right? We'll store it for all of them. It'll also store the logic for generating this DEP1, an instance of this dependency class. Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Maybe I could just show you a file. Let's. So this is a Drupal 8 code base. Site 3 for files. You have your PHP. Inside PHP, you have your service container. This is your dependency injection container. And then this is your dependency injector code. So yeah.
Piyush, can you increase the font size?
Let me try. Better? I don't think it'll. Let me move to the presentation mode. Can you guys see this file now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a file which is storing the mapping between classes and its dependencies. It stores it somewhere down the line. So yeah, I'll have to look for the mapping. But yeah, anyways, this file, it's supposed to store your mapping, and then it'll have functions. It'll have functions like this to instantiate your objects, to instantiate your dependent objects, basically the object which this class is going to be dependent on. Is it making sense?
Question.
Yeah, I'll go through that now. Just now. Is it clear till here? I mean, can we move forward?
Yeah.
Okay. So in Drupal 8, uh, there's a file called services.yml. Now, what this file would store? So for example, if you're going to create a controller,
Sure. What's a YML file?
okay, yeah, there was a huge discussion on this as well while Drupal 8 was being developed. So YML files are basically, it's just a key value store. It's a way you store your key and its values. For example, you know about JSON format, right? JSON is also a key value format, and there was a huge discussion on Drupal.org about why to use YML and why not use JSON. I don't remember the entire discussion now, but yeah. Finally, we ended up with YML because Symfony has a. So yeah, Drupal 8 as a part of its core there is Symfony. I hope. So how many of you know about what Symfony is?
No.
No. So Symfony is another great framework that's written in PHP. What Drupal thought of doing is it will pick up the core components in Symfony and use them in Drupal 8. Okay, so Drupal has picked up a lot of core components from Symfony, like its HTTP Foundation library, Guzzle library. We'll talk about YAML parser because Symfony has a YAML parser component. What it does is it parses your YML files, and saves that data into database. The presentation mode. I'll show you what a YML file looks like. So in Drupal 8, why are we using YML files for? We're using YML files just to store the metadata wherever required. So for example, there's an info file, right?
It is just
So
to store descriptive data, not code.
yeah. So for example, your info file, it has been replaced with an info.yml file, and it looks like this now. Just an example. We'll come back to these in detail while we do the code walkthrough. Okay. So services.yml, it's again going to store metadata about things. So we're going to create a database service, create_demo.database. Now, your YML file would store the class that the service corresponds to, that the service is pointing to. So it's pointing to a D. Now arguments is a really interesting thing. So argument is whatever your D8 demo controller constructor needs to be injected with. Okay, you define your dependencies as arguments in your services.yml file. Got it? There's another interesting thing that you see that's called tags in the second service. Access_check.superadmin. Do you see that?
No, Piyush.
Is my screen no? It's not visible?
No, it is just froze when you're swapping the screens.
Oh shit. So you're seeing my PHP storm still.
Yeah, the info.yml.
Okay. Google Hangout. And then share my entire screen again. You guys see it now?
No. Yeah.
Okay. You
Hang
see
on.
the second.
Yeah, we are in
Do you
slide
guys?
11.
Uh-huh.
We see slide number 11.
Slide number 11. It's so. Do you see the D8 and demo.services.yml example there?
Yeah.
Okay. Just take a look at the second service in the screenshot. There's a tags index there, right?
Mm-hmm. Line number 8.
Uh-huh. Line number 8. Yeah. So what are tags and services, and why do we use them? So tags are used to categorize services. Categorize services as if it's a database service, or it's just an access check service, or it's an X type of service, right? So that while when you do a drush CR, so basically in Drupal 8 there's no drush CC all anymore. You cannot clear the caches. You need to rebuild your caches. So whenever you do a drush CR, what it does is it looks for all this. It scans through all the services.yml files. It looks for tags. It looks for tags, specific tags. For example, access check. For example, database, and there could be others as well, and compiles them in a specific way. So, for example, an access check controller, an access check service needs to be compiled in a different way, and a database service would need to be stored in a different way in the service container, right? So that's what it tags imply to. Let's move to the next. Yeah, things are under construction, about to get geeky. Yeah, so we have your module info file now. Let's take a look at how the Drupal 7 code look like. So in Drupal 7, it was a .info file, name, description, core, configure, dependencies, files array. You all must be familiar with this, really familiar with this. So let's take a look at how is it changed in Drupal 8. So in the first place, .info file has changed to .info.yml. Okay, and the way you write a YML file is index name colon its value. So instead of equal to, it's just a colon. You need to take care while writing a YML file that it's a tab-indent format. So it's really sensitive if you put two tabs instead of putting a single tab, or if you don't put a tab at all. So for example, dependencies is an array in Drupal 7, right? When you're declaring an array, it needs to be one tab indented and then should start with a hyphen. The way you see dependencies block has been written over here.
Spaces instead of tabs.
It does. It does. Two spaces instead of tabs. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically indentate. Very sensitive to indentation. I mean, we probably put it wrong at tabs, but yeah, it's indentation. Okay. Another important thing, probably, yeah. In Drupal 7, you didn't have to define any type in info file, but in Drupal 8, you must define type. The type for this module is module. If it's a module or a theme, you need to define its type over here. If you don't define a type, it won't get listed in your module listing UI on admin modules page at all. The third important change is the configure. The value for configure was a pattern, right, in Drupal 7. And I already told you that anywhere we were using a path, it needs to be replaced with a route name, right? So in Drupal 8, we replaced it with d8_demo.admin. Now, this must be getting really confusing because we didn't define d8_demo.admin anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll define that when we discuss routing. We'll go to that now, I think. Yeah, routing. So routing hook_menu, it's dead. It's nowhere there in core anymore now. None of the modules even use it anymore because it's not there in the core. What has it been replaced with? It's been replaced with YML files again. So you remember hook underscore menu, what it does? It just stores metadata, right? Metadata about what your menu item, how your menu item should perform, right? What pattern should it get triggered on? What should be its page callback? What should be its access? Those sort of things, right? So yeah, all the metadata has been moved into YML files, so hook underscore menu. So the details inside hook underscore menu have also been moved inside YML files. So in Drupal 7, you had your hook menu, then $item, a pattern, title description, then type of the menu item. We'll discuss this as well. This has changed significantly. How do you define the type of a menu item? Callback, then you have access arguments. Access arguments is basically permission, right? Yeah. So let's take a look at Drupal 8. How has this changed? I think this must be pretty outdated. No, this is not. I updated it. Yeah. So it was a normal menu normal item, right? If it's a menu normal item, it should appear in the UI somewhere, right? As links. So any link that you want to appear in the UI should be defined inside a file named modulename.links.menu.yml. So you see the first example, it's d8 underscore demo.links.menu.yml. So any link that you want to appear in the that you want, it should appear in the UI or in the admin section. It must be defined inside your menu.yml, links.menu.yml. Before that, let's take a look at routing.yml file. So any path pattern which was defined inside your hook underscore menu needs to be moved to routing.yml, needs to be converted into the format that routing.yml accepts and to be put inside routing.yml file. Okay, this is the file which would store a mapping between your. Okay, this small change, I think path has been replaced with pattern.
Part. Look, there is part.
Okay, sorry.
Pattern was initially there was pattern.
Okay.
Now
Okay, yeah, there's a small. There was. So initially, while Drupal 8 was in dev, they were using pattern instead of path over here, but now they have changed it to path. So a routing.yml file, what it would have is it would have a route name which could be used inside modules wherever this pattern was getting used. To replace this pattern with this route name, and the mapping uses the path index. Then you have defaults. Defaults is basically going to hold your page callbacks. So your page callbacks need to be converted into controllers in the first place because Drupal 8 has controllers for route names. We'll discuss this. And then you have requirements which would hold your permissions. So basically your page callback, it got moved into default under defaults under underscore content. Your access arguments, it got moved into underscore permission inside requirements. Okay.
One constant recurring theme when porting to D8 is there's a clear separation between code and configuration. For example,
Right.
the weight, the title, description, the path, everything is a configuration. It's not actually code. What happened in D7 is you have everything stored inside a bunch of associative arrays. So that is actually configuration. So it's very hard to move around. So what they did was clear separation between what is code and what is configuration. So this happens in all walks of D8 porting.
Right. So yeah, moving next. Yeah, so page callbacks have been converted into controllers. So yeah, with the controller, under default underscore content, you see this huge name slash Drupal, then DA demo controller, and inside the DA demo controller there's a render content function. Right? Are you all familiar with the concept of namespaces?
Namespaces. I know you can still explain it, Piyush.
Okay. So, have you ever heard about the packaging concept in Java? I mean, it's totally off the line, but yeah. So namespace is like packaging classes under a single package. Okay. So you namespace it. Hello. Is there a question?
No, no, no.
Okay. So yeah, namespace is basically packaging n number of classes under single package sort of. Okay. So that all the classes under this namespace could share the functions defined inside one of the. So there's another advantage of using namespaces in this way. For example, Drupal slash lib slash module name slash controller and then controller class name.php. So for example, if in future wrote a really generic controller which could be used, there's some other framework, PHP framework or something that wants to use, and it has a class with the same controller name in there. So it avoids your conflicts with those, because since it's inside Drupal slash lib folder, this folder would not exist in the another PHP framework or something. Right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so here's some info about namespacing. It keeps it reusable in other projects with respect of conflict 0, because you have Drupal slash module name and then Drupal slash module name controller to keep all controllers related to module name grouped in the same place. So similarly, you could have so controllers is one part. There are other namespaces as well, which could be there for forms, for plugins. We'll come to that later. It's not discussed right now. So yeah, another important thing is where do you write your controllers? I mean, what should be the folder structure for that? In Drupal 8, it's considerably changed. You need to define a SRC folder inside your module folder, and then inside your SRC folder would reside your controllers, your forms, your plugins, whatever you need to use. Okay. So yeah, SRC directory is used to keep all PHP classes separate from other module or YAML files. Separation between config and code. One important thing, your namespace should follow the specific structure, the specific path to comply with PSR 0 standards. So PSR 0 is a standard which allows auto loading of classes rather than explicitly loading them using files array. So in Drupal 7 you had your files array which would auto load those files into memory, right? In Drupal 8 you don't need that files array anymore. You just need to comply to the standard and it will auto load them for you. Okay? Should we move on? Any questions?
No.
Okay. Let's take a look. Any questions, guys?
No, Piyush.
Okay. So let's take a look at how the controller would look like. So in the screenshot, you see a D8 demo controller.php class. So this class must have been defined inside your D8 underscore demo module inside SRC folder, and inside there is a controller folder, right? The namespace, it must follow the standard Drupal slash module name slash controller to get auto loaded probably. Yeah. And then as I told you earlier, Drupal 8 would provide you with a lot of base classes. For controllers, you have controller base class. you need to use this class. This is defined under the namespace of Drupal/core/controller. It's one of the core controllers. Under that, you define a, so your controller class must extend this controller base class. Now this controller base class provides you with a function called render content. Now render content is, it doesn't provide you with a render content. Instead, our mapping in the routing.yml says use render content as a page callback for this route name. So we write a function render content inside here and use Drupal_render to generate the markup and return it. So you see, things are conceptually this, not conceptually, I mean, in the back of your head, it stays almost similar, defining a path and defining a page callback for that. In Drupal 8, instead of that, you define a mapping between a path name and a route, and then you define a default this path, which is your page callback, and then return the markup from there. Okay. Now, one important thing in Drupal 7, you had your theme functions. For example, you could use theme items and then pass it dollar variables, and inside your dollar variables there would be items array, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in Drupal, you don't have theme function anymore. Okay. So you need to define your theme under hash theme index. So your hash theme would hold the name of the theme name, and then the argument that this theme needs need to be passed as hash items or hash A, hash B, hash C, right? And then you need to use Drupal_render to generate the markup for this renderable array. Clear? Yeah. I'll share. So one question from here is, how do you write your user_demo_content theme? So hook_theme isn't dead yet. So hook_theme stays the same. I should have the code somewhere. Let me quickly show you. Okay. So by the way, the screenshots in this PPT, the whole code for in the screenshot is available at repositories Drupal demo. Okay. So we have your module file. So inside module file, you define the way you used to do it in Drupal 7. However, there is a small difference. So in Drupal 7, the default thing for your hook theme was function callback, right? So if you didn't define templates, it would assume that your theme name, the index for your theme name is a function, and it would pass it will look for the function while trying to render the theme, right?
Mm-hmm. Here, battery is running low.
Yeah, Lakshmi?
Your battery is running low.
Oh my. Okay. Just a second. Yeah. Better now? So yeah. What was I talking about? Yeah, I was talking about hook theme. In Drupal 7, if you didn't define a template, by default it would look for the theme name as a function.
Mm-hmm.
In Drupal 8, however, it would look for a template file with the same name. For example, in Drupal 8, if this is a hook theme, That was used for d8 underscore demo underscore content dot twig basically, instead of looking for a function with the same. Defining, if you define a function callback, you need to have something called. Sorry. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
So what you need to do is you define a demo underscore content. So then it will try to look for this function as its theme callback. Got it?
Can you share the link for this repo?
Yeah, yeah. I'll share the link for the whole piece. Wait, I'm just yeah. Okay. Yeah. Was the controller. Then you have your route access. So yeah, you have. So this was your page callback. Now you have your access arguments, which were permission. That's pretty much clear.
Gotcha.
So
Share.
there.
Screen is frozen.
My screen is frozen again.
Yeah, we are in the GitHub window.
Let me reshare it. Entire screen share. Visible now? I'm on the slide number 20, I think. 23.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The route access to this route. It's in one way controlled using permissions. Now you could club multiple permissions in Drupal 8. Okay. You could define multiple permissions under underscore permission and use options index and say access underscore mode is all or any. So all would mean use X permission, Y permission, Z permission, all of these three, any, if any of these satisfy, right? You must be wondering, where did the access callback go? We talked about page callbacks, but we didn't talk about access callbacks yet, right? So under requirements, you could define underscore access and then underscore your custom access call and say if it should return true or false to allow access to this route. Okay? We'll see how to define a custom access callback as well. Okay, we need to see it right now as per the slides. Okay, so when you want to write custom access callback, so a custom access callback would be a reusable thing, right? Could be a reusable thing, right? I mean, there could be other modules which would want to satisfy the same criteria, which could want to satisfy the same criteria. So what you need to do is you need to define it as a service, as a new service. Okay? This needs to be tagged with access underscore check because it's going to be access check service. And then, yeah, the format stays the same. Module name dot services dot YML file. Then a services index. Under the services, you define the service name. Access underscore check dot superadmin. Then class, the class that it should point to, and then tag. Now, let's take a look at what this class should do. I'll have to go back to GitHub. Hello? Hello? Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Somehow my screen is frozen. Anyways.
Yeah. It's in the presentation.
Yeah. I can't move. Second. I'm gonna have to do something. What does this happen? No, but the thing is, Okay. Okay, I'll show you the code. Actually, something seems to be wrong. But my mouse is working fine. Let's do this. Okay. So to define an access callback, you define the service here, right? da-demo.services.yml, access underscore check.superadmin, class, then a tag, and along with the along with name, you need to say it applies to underscore access underscore check underscore admin. Now this is your access callback name. This is your access callback name which you'll use with your in your routing.yml file. So routing.yml file.
What does the
If I
super
cannot.
admin mean then?
So that's just a name. That's just a name. I named it. So what I was doing, I was allowing only user ID 1 access to this URL.
Okay, so super
So
admin
that's
is the name of the access callback, the human readable name, and applies to is the name of the function.
it's a access name. Now, for example, if some other module wants to use your service, okay, it would
Mm-hmm.
need to inject that service, and the service name would be access super admin, whatever it was.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, underscore access check admin true in your routing.yml. And now where do you define it? Inside src folder, of course, and then you have an access folder for defining your access callbacks. The class name, the namespace should be Drupal module name, and then the type of plugin it is, an access plugin. Now, I already told you that Drupal 8 would provide you base classes for everything. So it provides an interface, base class or interfaces. It provides you an access interface to implement any custom access checks. So your your access check callback should implement this interface. And what this interface has is an access function which takes route, request, and account as arguments. And accordingly, it could return static allow or deny based on your logic here. Clear? Any confusions, any questions? No? I'll take it. Uh, we were looking at the access callbacks. So access callback is done. There are a couple of reusable requirements. So there was a requirements index in routing.yml file, right? There are a couple of reusable requirements. For example, underscore access to true. It's similar to your access callback returning true. It's underscore access saying true. Then you can directly check if a user is logged in using underscore user is logged in too. Permissions is like this. You could club roles using role1 plus role2. That would be an AND. You could do role1 comma role2, which would be an OR. Clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have many local tasks. So in Drupal 7, you had your menu default local task and menu local tasks for menu tabs, right? In
Mm-hmm.
Drupal 8, it has been replaced with a file, again a YML file. It's again a configuration basically. Module name dot local dot task dot local dot YML. It's changed. It's sorry, my keyboard is not working. It's module name dot links dot task dot YML. So for normal menu item, it was links dot menu dot YML. For local tasks, it's links dot tasks dot YML. Okay. So in this YML file, you need to define your tabs basically. You could give this any name. It's just an index, and then your route name associated with this tab, title for the tab, and then if you want to club two menu items as tabs, you need to have root ID. Yeah, and now it's been replaced with base underscore route. Okay. So it's simple. It's just clubbing. It's just using the same base route for two menu items inside a file called menu.task.yml. Okay. Uh, we can take a look at the dynamic menu as well. So in Drupal 7, you used to have menus like node slash percentage node and a URL. When you used to visit node slash one, your argument your argument one, it used to be converted into the node object using a node load on it. You all familiar with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at how it happens in Drupal 8. So Drupal 8 has a param converter class. Okay, it's there in the core. It works for entities out of the box without any hassle. So for any entity that's there in Drupal 8, any entity that's defined in Drupal 8, you need to just place braces as dynamic arguments there. For example, we have a user and a node, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take an example of this path. It takes two arguments, user ID and node ID. Now, since these two are entities, we want them to get converted into user objects and node objects automatically. When the control reaches our callback functions, that's the render argument content. Okay, we just place them in the curly braces, and param converter would take care of it. So you have your render argument content function in the second screenshot. So now you need to make sure this function, it accepts a user interface and a node interface. Okay, is it clear?
Piyush, what if we are just giving a string or a numeric argument and not an entity?
It will throw errors. It will throw errors.
So there's no way we can pass a numeric argument.
Yeah, you can pass a numeric or anything. So if it's not an entity, you can just write $user. So for example, user slash node slash you write string str, okay?
Okay.
And then the third argument in this callback function should be $str without a type.
Okay, no interface.
No interface, nothing. You don't need to define a type for that if it's not going to be an object or something. Okay? Okay, shall we move? Okay. We're coming towards the end of these slides now. Okay. We have forms. So get form, Drupal build form, Drupal rebuild form, blah blah, lot of form functions, right? In Drupal 8, it's been replaced with form builder class. You have a form builder class in Drupal 7, Drupal 8, and then functions on top of it like get form, build form, rebuild form, get cache, set cache, blah 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 blah. A lot of functions, right? The way you write your form, it stays the same. The form API, it stays almost the same, nearly the same. The way you write your form array, it stays completely the same. Where do you write it? It changes. So any form that you need to define, it needs to extend one of these classes. A form base, a config form base, confirm form base. So there's a form base class for any kind of form that existed in Drupal 7. You need to utilize or extend those classes to create your custom forms. Okay, we'll take a look at these examples as well. Then let's coming down to the configuration management. We had variable get, set, delete functions. You see, rest in peace. Yeah. So they are also dead. They've been replaced with config factory. Now, how do you use a config factory? This is a really small example. $this get config factory get. So probably this class which this term sort of taking from is already injected with this config factory. Okay. So in case it's not injected, you could do it in a procedural way. Slash Drupal colon config and then your config name. So the way you write your so the way the config is structured now is a little different. So for example, if your module wants to have settings, what you would have to do is you'll need to create a settings object, which would be your module name, say d8 underscore demo dot settings. You able to see my screen? Sublime window?
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to create an object, d8 underscore demo dot settings, probably $config is equals to this, and then
The module name
$config.
prefix is mandatory, is it?
Yeah, it's better if you keep it this way, it's standardized.
Okay.
Okay. Then set, say x, comma, m. Okay.
Piyush, which
Yeah.
file are we supposed to write it?
You could write it anywhere. I mean, you could
Where?
do a variable set anywhere in your Drupal 7 code, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a replacement for your variable set. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to do a $config going to save. So this will save your configuration value as in a serialized format, be it demo dot settings colon probably A3 then X colon something like this. Not good at writing serialized directly. Okay. You would store this value inside your config underscore instance table or config table. There's a config table instead of variables table now. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. So with variable underscore get, you used to define default values as well, right? A default fallback. If this variable doesn't exist or if this variable doesn't exist, then use this value, right? In Drupal 8, there's no way you could define a second parameter over here. You just do $config get and this config object name and then get d8 underscore demo config text value from settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question would be how would you set a default value for these, right? Let's take a look at how do we do that. We have so you need to define a config folder inside your module. Inside config folder there should be an install folder. Install folder there should be a settings.yml file. Okay. Now the name of this file is really important. Now this is your settings object basically. So for example, over here we are using d8 underscore demo.setting. The file name should be d8 underscore demo.settings.yml. And inside this file goes your n configurations and variables and its values. Clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next is your plugin system. So Drupal 8 has a concept of things called as plugins, pluggable entities. No, not pluggable entities, basically plugins. So how many of you have worked with C tools, custom content types, which could be used in panels, paints, and things like those? Okay, those used to be really pluggable, right? In Drupal 7, those are really pluggable even now. So Drupal 8 has defined a whole sort of ecosystem around plugins. Maybe we can talk about it in detail in what are the other sessions, because that's a topic with Drupal 8. Uh, in short, let me give you a very quick example. For example, in Drupal 7, you create a block. You have a user login block, say. Okay. You want this user login block, not login block, probably a bad idea. Uh, Probably a statistics block, which you want to appear in two different regions on the same page. You want to place it in the sidebar as well as in the main content region. Out of the box? No?
No, we can't.
Without using any Contrib module, obviously. There's a module blog something. There's a module to do that as well, but yeah, out of the box you cannot do it. But in Drupal 8, since blocks are plugins, they're pluggable. They could be plugged into any region that the theme defines. Okay, so you could place one block on the same page in another region as well. So you're getting the benefit of keeping things pluggable now, right? Okay. By the way, hook_info is dead. It's been replaced with annotation-based discovery now. Now, what is annotation-based discovery? Any clue? What are annotations?
They are comments on top of your functions with meta info about the code. Follows.
Right, right. So Drupal 8, it uses those comments to parse plugins, basically. To parse plugins. So basically, for example, if we had info array or info hook, what it would take, how much memory would PHP take to parse them as PHP files, basically. It would take a lot of memory, and it won't release that memory until the process is completed, right? In Drupal 8, what they have done is they write the metadata in the form of annotations. Now this file is passed as a simple text files. These files are passed as simple text files initially. In the first pass, they are passed just as a simple text file to fetch the metadata info. Now the advantage here is while passing text files, once the memory is released, right? So this is a really performant way of handling your info in Drupal 8. So all info hooks, they are converted as plugins now. We'll take a look at how do you create a block as a plugin during the code walkthrough. So yeah, module or hook system functions, they have been replaced with module handlers. So this is something for the devs. In fact, the whole presentation goes for devs. This is about the most commonly used functions now. So for example, use module load and module load include, module invoke, those sort of functions. They all have been moved into a module handler class and separate functions to handle all these functionalities. Okay. Changes to really commonly used. So hook underscore init has been removed. It has been replaced with event subscriber interface. We'll talk about that as well today. You used to have your Drupal goto function to do a 301 or 302 redirect pages, right? It's been replaced with redirect response object. So boot has been removed. $get queue has been removed. Drupal form functions have been replaced with form builder classes. So these things will make sense if we talk about it right away, because we're going to talk about it anyways in the code walkthrough. So there are a couple of references. The whole Drupal 8 demo code is available under this GitHub URL. So there is porting your Drupal modules. This is your Swiss knife. I mean, Swiss Army knife, because link, it has documented each and every change which has happened while moving something from core Drupal 7 into Drupal 8. And there's a really nice search. For example, I go to this page. I'm trying to port my hook underscore help from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. What I would do is I will go to this page. I would just type in hook underscore help and say apply. In the change link, now it shows your D7 code and how it should be rewritten in your D8. Okay, you'd find most of it over here. Then there's a really nice blog post, detailed blog post on how do you do access checks in Drupal 8 routes. I'm not so sure what this URL is about. I think this is about the form builder. It's about hook menu. It's a really detailed info about hook menu. You see hook underscore menu was in Drupal 7, Drupal 8 asset.routing.yml, and then types into different links.type.yml files. And then DrupalCon Portland videos are available here. Really interesting videos and really detailed ones. So yeah, any questions? No questions, guys? Is everyone there? Hello?
Hey, can you walk us through the Drupal 8 folder structure, the core?
Yeah.
Hello?
So yeah, this is Drupal 8 beta folder structure. Looks different. Okay. So you used to have your all includes, miscellaneous, core modules and everything inside your Drupal webroot folder earlier, right? But all of the core functionality, it has been moved inside your core folder. You have core modules here. Then similarly, you have core themes over here. There's a vendor folder which has anything and everything related to Symfony inside it. So these are the Symfony components that Drupal is using. Drupal 8 is using. Not getting into the details. Then getting outside. Now you have your modules folder, which would store your Contrib and custom modules inside it. So we have two modules: social stats and time spent for ported in Drupal 8. Profiles. Then you have sites folder, which would have your site for a multi-site installation, site-specific modules and site-specific folders. Default. It's same as your Drupal 7. You have your settings.php, default.settings. You have your services.yml as well here. Okay. So, for example, so you have heard. So while Drupal 8 was in development, you would have heard you could run your Drupal 8 site completely without using a database. You could run it directly on the file system. You could directly have all your configuration on your file system. It obviously doesn't apply to any and every kind of site. Did you guys hear a word about it?
No.
Okay. So yeah, you could do that. So inside your files folder, there's a config folder with a random hash. You see this? Inside there is a go inside. So yeah, inside files you have your config folder. Now this config folder could store all your configurations that's there in database in the form of YML files and could be used to read all your configurations right from here rather than reading it from the database. In your settings.php, so all you need to do is go to your settings.php and then yeah, define your config directories here, and okay, it seems to have moved out from here somewhere. So basically you need to define your config directories here from which your configuration should be read, and then you needed to enable a service which was commented out in settings.default.settings.php. Probably it moved out in beta 2 or beta 3. I'll have to check back about that. Huh?
I wonder why converted to YML.
Sorry, Lakshmi?
I wonder why settings.php is still PHP and not YML.
Yeah, probably it needs to be parsed. I don't know. I mean, probably it needs to be executed.
Maybe in Drupal.
Uh-huh. Yeah, in Drupal 9 maybe. So yeah, that's pretty much about the slides. Anything confusing? I mean, I would like to hear from you. How did you guys find the slides like? Was it boring? Was it confusing? Was it interesting? I mean,
Oh, it was
any
excellent, Piyush.
questions? So, any questions on this? I mean, I didn't see a question coming from you guys.
We are mostly overwhelmed by the object orientedness of D8. We need some time to get that.
Okay. 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 So, should we do the code walkthrough now, or you want to do it in some time?
Guys.
Okay. So,
Code walkthrough இப்போ பண்ண போறோமா இல்ல கொஞ்ச நாள் கழிச்சா? இப்போ 10:45. Piyush, can we start the code walkthrough at 10:45?
sure. Sure, Lakshmi.
Okay, thanks for the PPT, Piyush. I'll just step out of the Hangout. I'll join you at 10:45.
Okay. So, do I need to do anything else to record it, or it would automatically get recorded?
No, it'll just appear in your. Yes.
Okay. So I can stop the broadcast right away.
Mhm.
Okay.